Now the story of Sodom and Gomorrah serves as a lesson of the consequences of sin and the wrath of God. Sodom and Gomorrah were cities mentioned in Genesis 18 to 19. They were known for their flagrant sin. This terrible, sad story about Sodom and Gomorrah reminds us of just how much God hates sin. During the time of Abraham, 3 angels came to visit him, and 2 of the angels decided to go visit Sodom and Gomorrah. The angels that came to visit Abraham were already on their way to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. While they were on their way, Abraham saw the men from afar. He ran to meet them and begged to entertain them in his house. Abraham understood that they weren't ordinary men. He could see into the spirit that they were angels but in human form. Genesis 18 verse 2 to 8, "And he lifted up his eyes and looked, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door, and bowed himself toward the ground, and said, My Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will fetch a morsel of bread, and comfort ye your hearts. After that ye shall pass on, for therefore are ye come to your servant. And they said, So do as thou hast said. And Abraham hastened into the tent unto Sarah, and said, Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the hearth. And Abraham ran unto the herd, and fetched a calf tender and good, and gave it unto a young man. And he hasted to dress it. And he took butter, and milk, and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. Now the angels asked about Sarah, Abraham's wife, to tell her the news of the promise of a son. God had promised Abraham a son earlier, and now he was ready to fulfill his promise. When Sarah heard that God will give her a son in a year's time, she laughed because she couldn't imagine how she will get pregnant, because she was well stricken in age and her womb was dead. Genesis 8 verse 10 to 15, And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life. And lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am waxed old shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also. And the Lord said unto Abraham, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child which am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed I will return unto thee, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laughed not, for she was afraid. And he said, Nay, but thou didst laugh. Sarah denied laughing when God told her the news of her son. Maybe she did not laugh openly but inside. This shows to tell us that God sees even the very actions of our heart regardless of what our mouth is saying. God said to Sarah, Is there anything too hard for the Creator of the universe? There is nothing God cannot do. Remember, He is God all by Himself. Now shortly after the news of Abraham's child, God began speaking about His plans to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. He couldn't hide it from Abraham of how close and intimate Abraham had become with God. The Bible says the successors of the Lord are with them that fear Him. God has secrets. He wanted to do something that was in His heart, but couldn't do it without telling Abraham. Abraham had become not just a worshiper of God, but he was now a stakeholder of the earth. And the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord, to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him. God began to tell Abraham that the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great and their sins are so grievous. He will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached him. When Abraham learned of God's plan to destroy the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, he asked God if He will spare them if He can find 50 innocent godly people. God reassures Abraham that if he finds 50 righteous people, he will spare the city for their sake. Abraham then asks about a lesser and lesser number until down to 10 people. God told him, for the sake of 10, I will not destroy the cities. After leaving Abraham, God's angels arrived at the gates of Sodom and Gomorrah, where they were greeted by the gatekeeper Lot. He pleaded with the angels to join him in his house, so he could wash their feet and serve them a meal. The angels agreed and went to the house of Lord. Lot was a foreigner to the evil realm of Sodom. He did not succumb to their lustful behavior in the land. One of the most prevalent sins in Sodom was homosexuality of men. We see this after the angels entered the home of Lot. The men of the city came to Lot's house and surrounded it. Genesis 19 verse 5, they called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them." The men of the city wanted to have sex with the angels that came to stay in Lot's house. Lot pleaded with the crows to reconsider, even offering his 2 virgin daughters in place of the 2 visiting men, whose angelic identity was apparently unknown to the lustful Sodomites. "Get out of our way," they replied him. "This fellow came here as a foreigner, and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them." Genesis 19 verse 9. As the crowd moved to break down the door, the men inside pulled Lot back inside and shut the door. Genesis 19 verse 11 to 13, and they struck the men who were at the doorway of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they became weary trying to find the door. Then the men said to Lot, "Have you anyone else here? Son-in-law, your sons, your daughters, and whomever you have in the city, take them out of this place. For we will destroy this place, because the outcry against them has grown great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it." After Lot is unable to convince his sons-in-law to lead the city with him, he ran away from Sodom with his wife and 2 daughters, encouraged by the 2 angels that the Lord will look after them. The angels first tell Lord to flee to the mountains, but Lord requests that his family go to a nearby city named Zoar. Genesis 19 verse 23 to 25, the sun had risen upon the earth when Lot entered Zoar. Then the Lord rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. So he overthrew those cities, all the plain, all the inhabitants of the cities, and what grew on the ground. God completely destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah because of their sins. Lot's wife was turned into a pillar of salt as she looked back. She disobeyed the instruction that the angel told him not to look back. By disobeying the instruction, her action suggests that she identified with the people of Sodom. Her failure to flee God's punishment is a lesson and a warning to everyone.